COVID-19 vaccine procurement plans. It comes as the country struggled to contain a third wave of the pandemic, reporting its second highest daily tally of cases. Domestic media has lambasted the government's approach to securing newly developed COVID-19 vaccines as too relaxed and overly reliant on locally produced shots, which will take more time than overseas options. According to one poll, 6 in 10 South Koreans believe urgency should be prioritized over safety when it comes to COVID-19 vaccines, and that inoculation should begin as soon as possible. South Korea had 1,092 new coronavirus cases on Tuesday, bringing the national tally to 52,550. Health authorities have expressed concern over public perceptions that view the vaccination program as a global competition, emphasizing instead the need to confirm the safety of the shots. Meanwhile, the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines for US military personnel stationed in the country will arrive as early as Thursday.
As the U.S. struggles with a nationwide spike in coronavirus infections, Pfizer on Wednesday said the federal government will pay it $2 billion for an additional 100 million doses of its COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer will deliver at least 70 million doses by June 30th, and the rest no later than July 31st, bringing the total number of doses provided to 200 million for a total price of about $4 billion. The deal comes after growing concern that the federal government had not done enough to secure the much-needed authorized vaccines, the other produced by drug company Moderna.
It fills me with great pride.
In a statement, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar on Wednesday said, quote, "This new federal purchase can give Americans even more confidence that we will have enough supply to vaccinate every American who wants it by June 2021. But how smooth will the rollout be? More than 1 million Americans, including hospital staff, nursing home residents, and government officials, have received their first COVID-19 vaccine doses, according to the CDC, in tightly controlled environments. But beginning in January or February, tens of millions of essential frontline workers in a range of industries will be eligible for inoculation. A panel of independent experts have recommended to the CDC that those workers include first responders and teachers, as well as food and agriculture, manufacturing, postal service, public transit, and grocery store employees. But it's not clear yet how health departments and pharmacies will verify the identity of a significantly larger and more diverse group of people eligible for the next round of vaccines. Adding to the monumental task, the criteria to qualify as an essential frontline worker varies from state to state.
Australia's government announced Wednesday that its most populous state will have eased coronavirus restrictions on Christmas, while Sydney's northern suburbs will remain on lockdown. This announcement came as New South Wales reported a second straight day of low case numbers, an indication that social distancing and mass testing measures are containing Australia's latest outbreak in Sydney. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian said restrictions will be back in place after the holiday.
Can I be very clear that whatever we have in place today goes back on the 27th, and in between they're very modest tweaks and modest changes to account for the fact that everybody has had a very difficult year.
Over the weekend, almost 250,000 Sydney residents were told not to leave their homes for 5 days unless for groceries or emergencies. Meanwhile, authorities rushed to contain an outbreak of almost 100 cases. With restrictions eased, Greater Sydney residents may host 10 people in their home, the exception being northern suburbs where residents are allowed up to 5 on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, so long as they're from the area. Australia has reported more than 28,000 coronavirus cases and 900 deaths since the global health crisis began.
Wrapped up in Red Cross blankets, Spanish Coast Guards transported 49 migrants rescued in the Atlantic Ocean to Aguineguin port on Gran Canaria on Wednesday. Interior Ministry figures show more than 21,400 migrants have arrived in Gran Canaria by sea through the end of December, an 8-fold increase compared to the same time last year. The large rise in arrivals has posed a logistical challenge for authorities in the Canary Islands, who have had to find alternative reception centres as existing centres filled up and thousands were forced to live in tents in conditions that an immigration judge called inhumane and degrading. It wasn't until November 18 that migrants stranded on the port were transferred to a military camp in Las Palmas. They remained there for a maximum of 72 hours and are then transferred to different reception centres, hotels and other accommodation. Arrivals of migrants in the Canary Islands have increased in 2020 as they looked for alternative routes due to increased patrolling off the Mediterranean coast of southern Spain.
Media tycoon Jimmy Lai was granted a $1.3 million bail on Wednesday by a Hong Kong court. He's the highest-profile pro-democracy activist to have been charged under the city's new national security law on suspicion of colluding with foreign forces. An immediate appeal by the prosecution was denied by the city's High Court. Lai is one of the financial hub's most ardent critics of Beijing. His Next Media Group is considered one of the key remaining bastions of media freedom. The 73-year-old was arrested in August when about 200 police officers raided the newsroom of his Apple Daily tabloid. In custody since the 3rd of December, Lai is also charged with fraud related to the lease of a building that houses the newspaper. The security law punishes what Beijing broadly defines as secession, subversion, terrorism and collusion with foreign forces, with up to life in jail. It has been condemned by the West and human rights groups as a tool to crush dissent in the semi-autonomous Chinese-ruled city, which has seen months of sometimes violent anti-government protests. Under the new law, the onus is on the defendant to prove they would not be a national security threat if released on bail, rather than on the prosecution to prove its case. While on bail, Lai will not be allowed to meet foreign officials, give interviews, publish any articles, or post on social media. He'll also have to remain at home and surrender his travel documents.
$900 million. That's how much organisers of next year's Tokyo Olympic Games are spending to keep athletes and spectators safe from spreading coronavirus. The figure was revealed on Tuesday as part of the latest budget for the delayed Games, taking the Games' total cost to $15.4 billion. Those COVID-19 countermeasures were included in the extra $2.8 billion allocated to cover the cost of postponing from this year because of the pandemic. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's government has declared he will host the Olympics at any cost and is pressing ahead with the preparations. Tokyo Olympics Chief Executive Toshiro Muto repeated the commitment to keeping the Olympics safe.
It's still a big issue for us to secure as many medical staff as we hope for when facing a situation where private medical institutions are struggling with management because of the coronavirus.
Countermeasures will include a PCR testing infrastructure and setting up a designated clinic. Some of the extra costs will be covered by additional sponsorship and insurance, organisers previously said this month. They would also tap a contingency fund detailed in last year's budget to cover some costs.
A warehouse piled high with kitchenware near Tokyo is a graveyard showing the toll the global health crisis took on the city's restaurants in 2020. Stacks of old sinks, fridges, pots, pans and chairs are all being refurbished and sold on by Tempest Busters, a second-hand kitchen supplier. For them it has been a bumper year. Takehito Tuyama, the firm's sales director, says they've bought double the amount of goods.
In normal years, our warehouse doesn't get full or overflow with products. But because of the rising number of businesses or restaurants closing due to the coronavirus, our warehouse is overflowing.
Between February and mid-December this year, around 126 restaurants and bars have gone bust in Japan. One of those forced to close was the ramen noodle shop, Shirahachi, in Tokyo's business district. Yashiro Haga, its owner, got $165 selling his old kitchenware to Tempest Busters.
I've been slowly cleaning the shop by myself every day. Now that my stuff is gone, the shop is bare and empty. It makes me sad.
Yashiro's premises is small, so social distancing and profits proved incompatible. Combine that with people encouraged to work from home, and his business of 15 years became unfeasible.